Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Before the what if starts, make sure you are comfortable, got your headphones on. Maybe before it starts, go get you a snack, a drink maybe. Just do whatever makes you comfortable, and if you enjoy the what if, make sure you hit the like button. That would be greatly appreciated because that tells me that you enjoy the content. And, while you're down there hitting the like button, maybe go and subscribe, and while you're at it, United starts off, smash the bell icon to be notified when I post a new video. So, yeah, take it away, intro.
Me sees, oh, you meant the world to me. I used to kiss your head when you cried for me. Hold your hand while the pain was over. Keep you warm by the roaring sea. You meant the world to me. Oh, you meant the world to me.
Thank you very much, intro. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to What If Deku Went Missing, Part 1. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give me a round of applause because this will be my third video in a 2-day period. Thank you very much. But if I get this posted in time, this will probably end up becoming my third video in 1 day. Can you guys believe that? Third video in 1 day. Like, I'm honestly surprised because this is the longest I've been able to do this for. So, let's hope I can keep this going, and we'll see how long we can do this. So, I'm not going to hold you guys back from the what if any longer, so let's just go ahead and get into it. So, we are going to start on Deku's 4th birthday. So, Deku would wake up and he'd sit up and start rubbing his eyes, as he would remember today is his 4th birthday. So he would immediately pull off the covers and jump out of bed. As he'd run into the living room, he would see Itachi, and Inko waiting in the living room with 2 presents. Deku would see that his dad's home and immediately run to his dad, as he would say, Dad, you're home? As him and Itachi would hug, as Itachi would say, I couldn't miss my little man's birthday, could I? As he'd rub Deku's hair. As Deku would see the 2 presents and ask Inko, Can I open them? As Inko would look at Itachi and say, Yeah, you can. As she would hand Deku a little necklace box. As Deku would open the necklace box and see that it's a yin and yang necklace. As Deku would ask, Why did you get me this? As Inko and Itachi say, So you'll remember that we will love you no matter what you do. And we will love you forever. As Deku says, Thanks, Mom, thanks, Dad, as he hugs them. As Itachi says, Don't worry, kid, you're welcome. You'll just have to pay me back with $100. As Inko hits Itachi in the shoulder, as Itachi would say, Hey, it was just a joke. As Deku would see the other present and ask, Can I open it too? As Inko says, Go on ahead. That's your main present. As Deku would open it up, he would see that it's Quirk Doctor appointment papers. As Deku would say, We're going to the Quirk Doctor? As Inko would say, Well, of course we are. Today's your 4th birthday. It's time to figure out what quirk you have. As Deku says, Yes! When are we leaving? As Inko checks the time, as she says, We need to leave in 30 minutes, so go get ready, okay? As Deku says, Yay! As he would run into his room and start getting ready. As Itachi would ask, Do you think he has a quirk? As Inko says, Of course he has a quirk. Why would you question that? As Itachi would say, Well, he hasn't showed any signs while, Kachan has. So I'm just a little bit worried. As Inko would say, Don't worry, Itachi. Everything will be fine. Our boy will have a quirk. And even if he doesn't, we will still love him. As Atashi says, yeah, you're right. There's no need to worry. As Deku would run and say, can we leave now? Can we leave now? As Inko would check the time again and say, yeah, we probably should. As she would kiss Atashi goodbye. As Itachi would say, don't worry, I'll get the party ready. As Inko says, thank you, sweetie. As she would leave with Deku. So they would get to the Quirk Doctor office, and Deku would immediately jump out of the car and start running full sprint into the doctor's office. As Inko would say, wait, Deku, wait! As she would hurry up and grab the Quirk Doctor appointment papers and her purse, as she would start running after Deku, as she says, Deku, wait! Please wait! As Deku would get inside and immediately run up to the front desk. As the front desk lady would ask, sweetie, where's your, mom? As Inko would run through the doors, exhausted, as she would get to the front desk and just start panting, as she would say, Deku, why'd you have to run inside like that? Oof. Ah, man, I'm getting my exercise for the week, huh? As she'd sit up and give the appointment papers to the nurse, as she would say, well, sorry to see that. Well, go ahead and take a seat over there. The doctor will call you back when, everything's ready. As she would say, okay. As she would tell Deku, I need to take a nap now. As she would sit down and lean her head back. As Deku would just be so excited he couldn't stay sat down. As Deku would just start running all over the doctor's office. As the receptionist would try and call to Inko to calm Deku down, she would notice that Inko she is zoned out how tired she is from that run. As the receptionist would say, here, do you want a lollipop? As Deku would say, sure. As she would say, oof, at least that calmed him down. But it'll probably end up giving him a sugar rush. Probably should have thought that through, but at least he's calmed down now. So the Quirk Doctor would call Deku and Inko into the back, and the Quirk Doctor would take Deku back for evaluation. So Inko and Deku would be waiting after Deku had done all the tests, and the Quirk Doctor would come back with some bad news. And this is how that conversation would have went. So Deku would just be jumping up and down in his seat as the Quirk Doctor would sit down and say, well, kid, you don't have a quirk. As Deku's excitement would immediately fade, as Deku's eyes would widen, as he would say, what? As the Quirk Doctor would say, sorry, kid, but you don't have a quirk. As Inko would say, there must be something wrong. Me and my husband both have quirks. He must have one. As the Quirk Doctor would say, I'm sorry, ma'am, but he doesn't have a quirk. As Deku would drop his All Might figure, as Inko would cover her mouth and just kind of contemplate about what the Quirk Doctor just said, as she would levitate the All Might action figure towards her, as she would say, are you sure there isn't anything wrong with your machinery? As the Quirk Doctor would say, nope. Well, as you can see in this x-ray right here, he doesn't have the joint. And in all the tests that we took, he doesn't have a mutation quirk, doesn't have an emitter quirk. He doesn't have any type of quirk. And if he does have a mutation, it must be somewhere I didn't check, because I didn't find anything. As Deku would just start crying, as the Quirk Doctor would smile a little bit, but he'd make sure to hide it. As Inko would say, well, we should probably go. We don't want to ruin the rest of his birthday. So, thank you for your time, Doctor. So Inko would start carrying Deku out. As Deku would rub the tears from his eyes, he would look back at the Quirk Doctor to see that he has a large grin on his mouth as they would close the door behind them. Deku would wonder why the quirk doctor found such amusement in his sorrow, but he wouldn't pay any mind to it. It doesn't matter anymore. So Deku would get home and he'd immediately run to his bedroom as Inko would give Itachi the bad news. Deku doesn't have a quirk. As Itachi says, "What do you mean? We just had this conversation. He must have a quirk." As Inko would say, "No, he doesn't." As Itachi would sit down and put his hand on his chin as he would say, "Crap." As Inko would sit down next to him and say, "I'm sure the kids will bully him about this." As Itachi says, "You're sure? It's obvious it's gonna happen. I'm sure no one in the school other than him doesn't have a quirk. Even if it's a weak quirk, they still have everyone in his class and in the school has a quirk. I'm sure of it. He's gonna get bullied." As Inko would say, "The best we can do is hide it. I don't want to, but I don't want my child to get bullied. I don't." As Tashi would say, "Yeah, you're right. That's our best move." Though I hate saying it. So Inko would go check on Deku as she would see Deku watching the All Might video as he would turn around and point at the screen as Deku says, "Can I still be a hero, Mommy?" As Inko would break down crying and hug Deku. As she would say, "I'm sorry, Izuku. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I couldn't give you a quirk. I'm sorry. If I could, I'd give you mine, but I can't. I'm sorry, Deku. I'm sorry." As Deku would just keep on trying to smile, just like All Might does in the video. He would just keep smiling while letting a tear roll down his face. So, now we are going to skip to when Deku is 13 years old. So, Deku would wake up and he would say, "One more day left of school. One more." As he'd get out of bed and get all of his stuff on, as he'd say, "Mom, I'm heading out." As Inko would say, "All right, honey, love you." As Deku would say, "I love you too, Mom." As he'd leave out the door, and Deku would realize he forgot his necklace. So he'd run inside and grab his necklace and put it on. As Inko would say, "You just never take that necklace off, do you?" As Deku would say, "Well, it's the only good thing that came out of my 4th birthday." As Inko would say, "Yeah, I'm sorry about that, sweetie." As Deku would say, "It's fine, Mom. It's fine." So, Deku would start walking to school, but he would notice that there is a black van following his every movement. Deku would try and shake the van off, but it just wouldn't stop following him. But eventually, Deku would make it to school, but he would notice the van is in the school's parking lot. As he would wonder, is it a possible new classmate? As Deku would say, "No, there's no way. Who would drive up to a school in a black van?" Who knows? So, now we are going to skip to, let's say, lunch break. So Deku would grab his food and start walking to his table as he would see Bakugo approaching him. As Deku would prepare to get his food slapped out of his hand, he would actually notice that Bakugo has a smile on his face. As Deku would put on his own smile, as he'd see Bakugo walk up to him, as Bakugo would put his arm around Deku and say, "Hey, Deku, do you see that girl over there?" As Deku would look at where he's pointing, as he would say, "The brown-haired girl?" As Bakugo would say, "Yeah." As he'd pull Deku in a little bit closer, as he'd say, If you go anywhere near that girl, I'll kill you. As Deku's smile immediately fades as he starts sweating bullets, as Deku would say, okay, okay. As Bakugo would knock Deku's lunch out of his hands. As the girl would see this and start walking over, as she would ask Deku if he needs any help, but Deku would immediately say, no, I'm fine, I can pick it all up. As the girl would say, no, I insist. As she would start helping Deku pick up all of his stuff. As Deku would look back up at Bakugo, as Bakugo would be giving him a death glare, as Deku would start sweating even more. As the girl would get all of his food back on his tray, as she would help Deku up, as Deku would say, well, I really should be going, as the girl asks, what's your name? As Deku says, it's Izuku Midoriya, as Bakugo would hit Deku in the shoulder, as he would say, no, it's Deku Midoriya, sorry. As the girl would look at Bakugo, as she would say, Bakugo, be nice. As Bakugo would smile, as he would say, oh, don't worry, we're good friends. As he would put his arm around Deku, as Deku would say, yeah, really good friends. As the girl would ask, so how long have you guys known each other? As Deku would ask, or would say, probably a good 5-6 years, maybe. As the girl would lean in and ask Deku, so has he always been this way towards you? As Deku would say, for a good couple years, yeah. As Bakugo would start strangling Deku with his arm. As the girl would walk up to Bakugo and hit Bakugo on the top of the head, causing him to drop Deku. Deku would drop onto his knees and start gasping for air, as Uraraka would say, Bakugo, play nice. As Deku would ask for the girl's name, and she would say, oh, I'm Uraraka. Or, that's what my friends call me. My full name is Uchako Uraraka. As Deku says, well, that's a pretty name. As she would say, really? Thank you. As Deku would look up at Bakugo, as Bakugo would start punching his hand. As Deku would say, well, I should really get going. As Bakugo says, yeah, you better scram. I need to talk to my girl. As Uraraka would say, hold on, just a second. We haven't started officially dating yet. As Bakugo would say, I know, sweetie. As Uraraka would say, that gives me the creeps. As one of Bakugo's friends would walk up to him and say, hey man, we need you over here. They're having a heated discussion again. As another two of Bakugo's friends would be having a very heated conversation between who's better, All Might or Endeavor. As Bakugo would go, hey, All Might is better, you two! As he'd run up to him. As Deku would start walking away, Uraraka would grab Deku's hand and bring him into the locker room. As she would shove Deku up against a locker and say, so you think I'm cute, As Deku would start blushing as he would say, yeah. As he'd look down at Uraraka's boobs as he would say, oh gosh, you're too close. As she'd start pressing her boobs up against Deku even more. As Deku would start blushing in, a lot. As Uraraka would pull Deku's head down, and she would start making out with Deku. As Deku would try and resist, he couldn't because she was holding him up against a locker. He couldn't do anything. As Bakugo would come into the locker room looking for Deku, he would see Deku and Uraraka making out. As Bakugo would say, what the heck is going on here? As Uraraka would quickly pull away from Deku, as she would say, he started making out with me. He tried to rape me. As Deku would say, what? No! As she would start twirling her hair and walk away. As Bakugo would run up to Deku and push him up against the locker, as he would punch the locker right beside Deku's head, as he would say, "Why, man? Why?" As he'd hit the locker again, as he'd say, "I loved her, man. Why'd you have to do this to me? You've always ruined my life. You're always following me. You're like a parasite, dang it. You're stuck to me. You never leave me alone. Can't you see that you're ruining people's lives?" As Bakugo would hit the locker again, as he'd say, "I loved her. Why?" As Bakugo would step away from Deku, as he'd say, "Why do you have to ruin everybody's lives, you quirkless..." I can't even right now, Deku. Just leave me alone. As Bakugo would wipe the tears from his face and walk away. Deku would just take a moment to contemplate what just happened. As Deku thinks to himself, yeah, all I ever have done is just ruin people's lives. I'm a quirkless nobody. As he'd grab his necklace, and he'd say, the only people who'd ever love me are my own parents. But that isn't a very high goal. As Deku would walk out of the school and start walking back home, Deku would notice that the black van isn't in the parking lot anymore. So Deku would take a sigh of relief and keep walking home. But Deku would turn into an alleyway, thinking it was a shortcut, but he would see the black van in the alleyway. Deku doesn't really want to go by the black van, but he knows he has to because it's a shortcut home. So Deku starts walking down the alleyway. As he gets past the black van, he would hear the one thing he didn't want to hear. The van doors would open, and two men would walk out and start running towards Deku. Deku would take off running, and he'd turn the corner, but then he'd get hit or pushed down. As Bakugo would say, "Dang it, you're like a parasite! Just leave me alone!" As Deku would say, "They're trying to kidnap me!" As he'd point behind him. As Bakugo would say, "There's no one there, you cork... Why? Why do I always have to run into you?" As he'd walk away. As Deku would look down the alleyway to see that the van is gone, Deku would take a sigh of relief, but then a bag would go over Deku's head. As Deku would try and resist, the men would strangle Deku until Deku would pass out. Deku would wake up with a bag over his head, as he would ask himself, what happened? One second Bakugo was talking to me, the next, I can't see anything. As he'd remember what happened, as Deku would start screaming for help, as he'd hear a familiar voice, but at the same time, a voice he never wanted to hear again. As the cork doctor would pull the bag off of Deku's head, as he'd say, "Oh, hello there, child. How are you doing today?" As Deku would say, "What do you want with me?" As the cork doctor would say, "Just a few tests, that's all." As Deku would say, "What tests?" As the cork doctor would say, "Well, we are trying to create something that can kill All Might, and you will be a large step in completing that process." As Deku would say, "Why couldn't you have used anyone else?" As the cork doctor would say, "Well, because the cork, corkless and cork, percentages are so much different. It was hard to find a corkless person till you came along. But we couldn't use you when you were 4 years old because well, we'd have to kill your parents in order to get to you. So we decided it'd be easier to kidnap you when you are older and, well, less reliant on your parents for everything. As Deku would say, please, man, just let me go. As the Cork Doctor says, don't worry, you'll be let go eventually. As the Cork Doctor would take a syringe and fill it up with this unknown liquid, as he'd squirt a little bit out of the end and inject it into Deku. As Deku would scream, as he'd say, what the heck is that thing? As Deku would start clenching his arm, as his arm would just start shaking randomly, as Deku would ask, why? Why me? My life is already sucky as it is. Why? As the Cork Doctor would say, this is precisely why we needed you. Now stop resisting. As he would inject the rest of the serum into Deku. As Deku would close his eyes and clench his fists, as his veins would start pulsating, Deku's eyes would start bulging as he would scream in agony, as the Cork Doctor would say, yes, keep screaming. This is exactly the info I needed, as he would start writing down everything Deku does. As Deku would scream, I hate you! As the Cork Doctor would say, yes, feel the anger. Feel it. Let it fuel everything. As Deku would just start clenching his teeth as he's in so much pain. But then the pain would wear off, as if nothing had happened. Deku would be shaking uncontrollably, as the Cork Doctor would say, well, time for the test, as he would grab some pliers and pinch it down on Deku's toe, as Deku would ask, what are you gonna do now? As the Cork Doctor would say, just a few tests, as he would start pulling Deku's toe, as Deku would say, ah, why, ah, as the Cork Doctor would start twisting and pulling his toe until eventually he would rip Deku's toe right off, as Deku would scream in pain, as Deku would look back down at his toe to see that it's starting to regenerate. As the Cork Doctor would say, yes, magnificent, it's working! Now it's time to get into the real fun tests. We just gotta make sure you don't die. As Deku would say, please, just let me go. As the Cork Doctor says, if your life is so sucky, why would you want to go back to it? As Deku would ponder that thought for a moment, but immediately the Cork Doctor would grab onto one of Deku's toenails as he would start ripping the toenail off, as he would go toe by toe, ripping out each and every toenail, as Deku would scream in agony, as the Cork Doctor would say, yes, keep screaming, let it fuel you, as Deku would scream even louder, as the Cork Doctor would go through all of Deku's toenails, as he would say, well, time for the nails. As Deku would say, nails, what are you talking about? As he would grab a plank of nails and put them underneath Deku's feet, as he would lower the chair, as Deku would have to be forced to have the nails poking into Deku's skin, as Deku would scream, as the Cork Doctor would say, yes, keep screaming, as Deku would just keep on screaming, because it's so painful, as the Cork Doctor would remove the plank and throw it away, as the Cork Doctor would say, ooh, what to do next, as he would grab a kitchen knife and walk over to Deku's hand, as Deku would say, no, please, I beg of you, as he would chop off Deku's middle finger, as Deku would scream in pain, as he'd say, "Why? Please, leave me alone!" As he would cut off Deku's thumb, Deku would just be screaming in pain. As the pain of Deku's toes regenerating and the mix between regeneration and Deku's fingers being cut off, he's just being put into so much pain. He can't bear it. As the quirk doctor cuts off another one of Deku's fingers, and Deku screams even louder than before. Then a man would walk in, as the quirk doctor would say, "Sir, the tests are going magnificently. We were just getting to the good part, too." As Deku would say, "Not good for me." As the man would say, "Aw, maybe show our friend a little more generosity." As the quirk doctor would say, "Yes, you're right. We should make it where he can't see what's happening. And then we should cut off his ears so he can't hear what's happening." As the man would say, "Yes, exactly." As the man would leave the room, as Deku would say, "No, please, no." As the quirk doctor would grab an ice cream scooper and plunge it into Deku's eye, as Deku would scream in pain and just start kicking and kicking, as the man scoops Deku's eyeball right out of his socket and rips the eyeball out. As Deku would scream and just start kicking and kicking, the man would say, "Ooh, looks like we have a feisty one here. We might have to tighten your restraints." As Deku would say, "No, please." As the man would say, "Oh, maybe there's another part you want removed." We'll get to that later." As the man would take the ice cream scoop and plunge it into Deku's other eye, as Deku would scream as all he can see is the blood that's gushing out of Deku's eye right now. As Deku's just screaming and kicking as hard as he can, the quirk doctor would pull Deku's eye clean out. As the quirk doctor would say, "You have such beautiful eyes. Good thing they'll be regrowing back." As Deku can't cry anymore because he has no eyes to cry out of, Deku would just be not crying, but he'd be he doesn't know what to think. His day went from worse to just flat out horrible. As Deku can feel his fingers regenerating and his toenails regenerating. As the man would say, "Well, I guess it's time to get to the good part." As the man would lay the chair down, and then Deku would hear a buzzsaw going off. As Deku would wonder what's going on, as he would feel a painful sensation on his head, as he would immediately know he's cutting into Deku's skull right now. As the man would cut Deku's skull clean open and put something into Deku's brain. As Deku would be screaming in agony, as the man would sew Deku's head closed. Deku would just be screaming and screaming, but the man would stop torturing Deku, as he'd say, "Well, all my tests are complete. I'll see you tomorrow, Izuku Midoriya." As Deku would say, Why? As the quirk doctor would leave the room, Deku would have a moment to himself, as he would just ponder over everything that has happened in his life, from the age of 4 all the way up to now. Deku would ponder on his life's decisions and just wonder what he could have done to get out of this situation. The next day, the Cork Doctor would unleash Deku's restraints, as Deku would say, "You're letting me go?" As the Cork Doctor would say, "No, there's just one more test we need to do before, well, you're free to go." As Deku would say, "What's that?" As the Cork Doctor would say, "We need complete control over you." As Deku would wonder what he means, as the man would say, "You are going to kill this target. If you do not succeed, you will die." As Deku almost mindlessly says, "Yes, master." As Deku would get up out of the chair and walk out of the room. So Deku would find where the man lives. As he would grab his binoculars and look into the house, he would see a young couple with a baby. As Deku would say, "There's no way. I can't kill them. They're happy and I couldn't." As the Cork Doctor pitches into Deku's ear and says, "If you don't, you'll die. And you don't want to die. You want to see your family, don't you?" Deku would say, "Yeah, but I can't kill them. I can't. I can't." As the Cork Doctor would say, "Yes, you can. Now get in there and kill them all." As Deku would see another child, around the age of 4, walk out from their bedroom with a drawing of their parents. Now Deku would say, "No, I won't do it." As a shock goes through Deku's body, as Deku would scream, the Cork Doctor would say, "You will do what I bid you to do." As Deku would fall onto his knees, as he would say, "Yes, master." As the Cork Doctor would say, "That's a good boy. Now go kill them. Kill them all." Deku would say, "Yes, sir." Deku would jump onto their roof. As the parents would be talking, they would hear something thud on the roof. As the dad would tell the mom to go put the baby down for rest, as he'd grab their gun. As Deku would drop onto their front porch and start kicking the door in. The dad would immediately run to the door as he would say, "Whoever you are, I have a gun and I'm not afraid to use it." As Deku would just keep on kicking and kicking the door in, till eventually he would kick the door wide open. As the mom would scream and slam the baby's door and locking it with her 2 kids, she would hide in there. The dad would see that it's just a young boy. The man would ask, "What are you doing here? How'd you do that?" As Deku would say, "I have orders." As Deku would start walking up to the man would say, "I'm warning you! I'm warning you!" As Deku would get even closer, the man would take a warning shot towards Deku. This wouldn't even shake Deku, as he'd keep on walking towards the man. The man would be forced to shoot Deku. So the man would point the gun at Deku and take the shot. The bullet would hit Deku in the shoulder, causing Deku to stop in his tracks. Deku would feel his shoulder as it would start to regenerate. As Deku would say, "You made a bad mistake." As the man's eyes would widen, as he would scream, as Deku would jump into the man, sending them both out the window and onto the man's barbecue, or onto, what should I say they land on? I don't know. Let's just say the trampoline. Why not? As Deku would jump into the man, causing them both to go out the window, they would land in the trampoline as they would both bounce over the barrier of the trampoline. Deku would land perfectly, but the man would land on his back. As Deku would catch the gun, and the man would try and get up to attack Deku, but Deku would put one bullet in the man's head, killing him instantly. Deku would look back up at the window and jump as he'd grab onto the ledge and pull himself back into the house. As he would hear the woman whispering to her children, "Okay, be quiet, okay? Daddy's gonna handle it, okay? Don't worry, everything's fine." As Deku would say, I can't kill them. I can't. As the quirk doctor would say, "You will do it!" As Deku would start pulling out his hair, as he would say, "No, I can't!" As the quirk doctor would say, "Yes, you will!" As he would send a shock through Deku's body, as Deku would scream in pain and fall onto one knee, as he'd say, "Alright, I'll do it." As the quirk doctor would say, "Good. Don't leave any of them alive." As Deku would walk up to the door, he would grab the door handle and rip the door off its hinges. As Deku would walk inside of the room, the woman would scream as she would grab her kitchen knife and run at Deku. She would start slashing at Deku, but Deku would grab her arm and break it in half. The woman would scream in pain, but Deku would grab her by the face and lift her into the air as he'd start crushing the woman's skull. As the woman screams and starts kicking and flailing, the little girl would grab her mother's knife and plunge it into Deku's stomach. This would cause Deku some slight pain, but it's nothing like he's experienced the other day. As he'd crush the woman's skull and throw her out the window, he would grab the young girl and lift her into the air, as he'd say, "You shouldn't have done that." As he would start choking the girl out, as she would ask for help, as she'd say, "Please, someone, help me." As Deku would crush her neck and drop her to the floor. As Deku's about to leave, he would hear a baby crying. As Deku would turn around to see the baby in the crib, crying, Deku would say, No, I won't do this. I won't." As the quirk doctor would say, "Yes, you will." As Deku would walk up to the crib, he would decide to put the baby out of its misery, as he'd grab the father's gun, put it to the baby's head, and look away as he'd pull the trigger. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where I'm going to end this episode off. I'm sorry if I repeated a couple lines. It's because I'm thirsty and just tired. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe. And while you're at it, United States of smash the bell icon to be notified when I post a new video. So yeah, I am going to go real quick. Peace.